Well, who are you? What do you do? Where are you from? Tell me about yourself.
Well, I'm Jackson Lahmeyer. I'm here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and my wife Kendra and we get the privilege of serving as the pastors of Sheridan Church in Tulsa, but also a campus in Oklahoma City. We got five kids. Two of them are driving, which is just a very unusual thing for
Yeah,
us
for
because they're
sure.
both brand new drivers, and that's exciting. But I also serve on the White House Faith Office as well as the National Faith Advisory Board and was the founder of Pastors for Trump during the 2024 presidential election. So having a lot of fun, and I love sports, if you
Yeah.
can't tell from what's behind me.
So just out of curiosity, you say that you were the founder of Pastors for Trump, like individually, or was there a group of you guys that came together, or how did that come about?
Well, I was asked to lead the coalition, and
Okay.
there was over 10,000 pastors, actually, all 50 states, that were aiming to mobilize, the largest voting bloc in America, which is
Yeah.
the evangelical voting bloc. And so we did that. Evangelicals turned out in mass. 9 out of 10 voted for Donald Trump, helped get him across the finish line, and now he's in the Oval Office. And so he kept a promise
Wow.
to all the pastors. And he said, I'll do something that no president's ever done. I'll start a White House faith office, a standalone office in the West Wing. And President Trump kept his promise. Unlike, other politicians that promise you the world on the campaign trail, then deliver nothing once they get in, President Trump kept
Right.
his word.
Wow. So how did you find yourself in that position? Were you asked, or did you take this initiative upon yourself? And how did that happen? Like
Yeah.
who,
So
yeah, go ahead.
during 2020, I decided to keep my church open. And that got me in a fight with the mayor of Tulsa, who threatened to arrest me.
Did you
And
even
then
close down for one church service?
No, I went to the roof. I went to the roof and was
Wow.
preaching from the roof, and the mayor didn't like that. He
That's a
thought,
pretty gangster move, I gotta say. Come
it
on,
was
man.
it was
Gangster in a good way.
it was a fun time preaching from the people would be in their cars or out of their cars and be instead of saying like amen in church, they
Right.
honk their horns if I was preaching good. It was a funny experience. And we did that for I want to say 8 Sundays, and then we went back inside. But
Were you
that
ever
that
concerned about retribution or being arrested or being
Yeah, he
fined or
threatened to
anything?
arrest me that first Sunday because we had made it public. We were going to do church on the roof, and
Yeah.
so he threatened on Saturday to arrest me. And I said, there's a ladder in the back, and you guys can come up to the roof. That's where I'll be on Sunday.
Yeah.
And it was all bark, no bite. But that kind of
Right.
got me thrown into the media because we took a stand. Then I threatened to sue him. And I said, this was all public. So I said, if you step foot on our campus to try to shut us down, that I'll sue the city of Tulsa. And when I win, I'm going to build a new building
Yeah.
with the new money, and I'll name the building after the mayor of Tulsa. So everyone knows who paid for it. And
Right.
you can imagine how that kind of circulated.
Yeah.
And so then we kind of became fighters in the fight of freedom in regards to, we didn't enforce the mask. So the health department of Tulsa labeled us a super spreader and they threatened to shut us down as well. We fought that, we won.
Yeah.
Then the vaccine rollout happened in September of 2021. I signed over 75,000 COVID-19 religious exemptions for people all across the country, thanks to the Washington Post,
I'm
who
sure
ran a
your
hit
hand,
story
I'm
on me.
sure I'm sure your hand
Well, we
was
got
pretty tired
efficient.
after.
We got efficient at it after the
Did
first
you
several
use the Joe
thousand.
Biden auto pen? Be
We may have
honest. No.
used we may have used in the later days when once you're getting flooded with thousands. I was only doing it for people in my church,
Okay.
and then the Washington Post ran a hit piece on me doing it,
Right.
saying that I was gonna kill grandma and grandpa and all that kind of stuff. But because of the Washington Post, when you typed in COVID-19 religious exemption form on Google, I popped up first. So you have all these
Wow.
people who don't, just go in, and so it
It was
was an
like an
interesting thing.
advertisement.
It was free advertisement, man.
Amen.
Now it wasn't nice what they said.
Right.
I didn't like myself after I read it, but it was the Washington Post, so you let it go pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And so that got me involved in what you could maybe call the MAGA world, the Trump world. I became very good friends with Don and Eric. They come to my church every year. And so, through all of that, being a pastor that was kind of outspoken, a pastor that was involved politically, I didn't choose to be involved politically. It was the mayor of Tulsa who got me involved when he threatened to arrest me.
Right.
And so, all of that led to me being asked to lead Pastors for Trump because of recognizing the need for the evangelicals to turn out and vote.
Right.
And yeah, it was a blast, man.
So, what do you think? Uh, okay, clearly you did something that the vast majority of pastors, my dad was a pastor during that time, so we were one of the first churches to reopen, but we didn't stay open that whole time, contrary to my input. But anyway, but we were one of the early ones. Why do you think that you had the fortitude? What was different about you and your view on this compared to every other pastor? Almost every other pastor shut down, at least for a little bit, you know? So,
Yeah, it's a good question.
yeah.
Um, I will say at the time, I was 29. I was the youngest pastor in Tulsa. Still am the youngest pastor in Tulsa,
Mm.
lead pastor. And I had many senior pastors in the city that I respected who called me and said I was embarrassing the ministry, that I needed to shut down. Remember what it was? It was like, give us 14 days to slow the
Yeah.
spread, or
Yeah.
I don't remember what it was, but it was something,
I knew
and they
that
were
was
just saying,
BS immediately. Oh my gosh.
yeah, so maybe part of it was youthfulness.
Hmm.
Um, I was, like I said, the youngest. I didn't, at the beginning, I didn't know what we were dealing with. I don't think anybody really knew. So my mentality was, let's just get creative. We always stream our services online. That was
Right.
something we were doing before COVID. So if someone wanted to stay home and watch it, that was up to their discretion. But I think that initially it was, let's just be creative. And I'll tell you what really set it off for me. What made the decision for me was probably a lot to do with my location. My church is in the heart of Tulsa, but across the street, there's a Home Depot. On the other side of the street, we're at like what do you call it? A crossroad section. There was a liquor store and then a strip club. And so Home Depot, the liquor store, and the strip club, they were all open. And so
Wow.
here I was on the other side of the street, and I
Right.
was like, well, if they can be open, I'm gonna stay open
Yeah.
too,
Well, they're essential.
Right, and so
Yeah.
I was like, I feel like for our church members, our church is like essential. And here's the
Right.
thing, unlike Home Depot or the liquor store, we weren't open every day of the week from morning till night. We were open Sunday morning from, 10 to noon.
Right.
And so it was a no-brainer to me, if that makes sense. Now, was there
Well,
pressure? Yeah. I mean, yeah,
yeah.
there was a lot of pressure to fold.
It's funny though, because of those four buildings or businesses, only one of them is actually constitutionally protected. But
Right.
that's the one that they specifically attacked. That's so interesting and weird to me. But okay,
It
so
was a
that
wild time.
So that makes sense. Okay, so from my understanding, you have a book that
I do.
has it been released or is it going to be
Yeah,
released soon?
yeah. So my first book came out in the spring, Chasing After the Wind, why nobody's catching what everybody is chasing. It's all about how everyone's chasing happiness, but nobody seems to be catching it because
Mm,
once you get something you think will make you happy, you sell it at a garage sale for 50 cents in 5 years, and you're chasing something else. And so that
yeah,
was book number one. My latest book just actually came out. It's called Divided. Breaking free from the double life. And, we've seen so many pastors of recent, media cycles who have fallen, right? And these are seasoned pastors. These are people who've been in it 30, 40 years. And then at the end of their race, some scandal breaks loose, right?
right.
And you find out, oh man, he was living a double life for the last 40 years and it's demoralizing, right?
Sure.
However, pastors are not the only ones that live double lives. So do most Christians.
Yeah,
They're one way on Sunday morning and then a completely different way, Monday afternoon. And so the
right.
book is all about not living divided, not the double life, because the double life is dangerous. Sin grows in secrecy. And if you do not address the issue when it's small, it's like cancer. It'll only spread and get bigger. And so I get very practical, real, raw, especially about myself, being in ministry and living a double life,
Yeah.
preaching, in my opinion, very good sermons about what to do, what not to do, but then not always living that out. And so, how can you be consistent? How can you be authentic? How
Yeah.
can you live free? And that's what that book is all about.
Hmm. Okay, so why do you think that story is so common among pastors?
Well, I think it's because pastors are humans. I think,
Well,
if
absolutely.
pastors
Yeah.
weren't humans, so a couple of reasons. One, if you were the enemy and you wanted to discredit the message of the gospel,
Mm.
if you can't discredit the message itself, well, maybe you discredit the messengers
Yeah.
who are delivering the message. Because if I come and I deliver truth to you, but you find out that I'm a total scumbag and you find out I'm a con man, it's going to hinder the truth that I gave you,
Sure.
even if it was truth.
Right.
I give you truth, but it's because who delivered it. Then all of a sudden you question, well, is that really true?
Hmm.
For coming from that, like if I come to you and I say the sky is blue, and then you find out I was a serial killer, you'll look up at the sky just to double check, is the sky really blue? And so I think the enemy targets people in ministry because God's called them to be the messengers, to equip the body. And if he cannot discredit the message, which he cannot, the gospel has an inherent power in and of itself. So if you can discredit those who are preaching the gospel, it'll turn people away. And what do
Yeah.
people say? One of the reasons I don't like church is because of all the hypocrites in the church and preachers. And so I think that's part of it. And then also, pastors are humans. So to expect a flawless record,
Right.
well,
No one
that's
has
not
that.
reasonable.
Only
No,
one.
no. Yeah.
So, just while we're on this, what do you think about pastors like people like Kenneth Copeland or Benny Hinn? They don't necessarily have like a sex scandal or, they're not using meth. But
That's a good thing, right?
right, yeah,
That's a
that's
positive.
they got step one down. But it seems like okay, I'll just tell you I'll speak for myself. Those kind of guys seem like they have been completely overcome by their ego. And and listen, I'm an outside observer. I only see clips, so I don't know these people personally. Who am I to judge their actual faith in Jesus? But it just seems so performative and like I don't know. I'm hoping you can kind of sense what I mean.
Yeah. Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
what do you think about pastors like that seem to, at least in my opinion, have been completely overcome by their ego? What is your advice to those people and how do they overcome that?
Well, I don't know if I'm in any position to advise uh, Kenneth Copeland or whoever, Benny, and they're much, much older
Yeah.
and more seasoned than
And
I am.
also people,
However,
yeah, people have a really big issue with pastors being personally wealthy. And like
sure,
if you have a private jet, like you're not a real Christian. I don't necessarily believe that, but anyway,
yeah.
yeah, what is your response to all that?
Obviously, not knowing them individually, I would never be like, yeah, I know this person is fake or whatever. But however, that performative aspect that you just described, that is of a previous generation.
Right.
Most of those preachers who are probably 70, 80, that was kind of how ministry was done at that point. Now you shift to today, people are looking for the exact opposite of performative, flawless ministry. They're looking for authentic. They're looking for genuine, flawed, a leader that can say, hey, I've got this struggle. I've got this struggle. Because, when you go and you're trained to do ministry, you're told not to share your struggles because the people are supposed to look up to you and
Right.
they're supposed to follow you. Well, actually, that has been inversed in our generation. If there is not a leader willing to say, I struggle here, our generation don't want to follow that because they view it as fake, they view it as performative. So I think part of it is just the generational gap. There's just a gap in how ministry is done. In regards to ministers or ministries and wealth, I think it's a dicey one. It's kind of twofold. So obviously, if a ministry is super uber large, they're bringing in, millions and
Right.
tens of millions of dollars. And all that money is done by donors primarily. They'll sell books or whatever, but donors. And so if a donor wants to continue to give to a minister that is living a lavish lifestyle, well, that's the donor's decision. It doesn't mean I'm going to donate towards that, but
Right.
that's a donor's decision. You can donate however you choose. A lot of ministers, I'll tell you where the money is made. The money is made is in books.
Right.
That's most pastors don't make their money from the church.
Right.
They make their money from book deals. They make their money from other speaking engagements. They get
Yeah.
paid via that way. So, how, and I know, and I don't know if the story is true. It's what I've been told. The reason Kenneth Copeland is as wealthy as he is because his ministry 50 years ago purchased like 1,000 acres, and come to find out it was oil underneath.
Oh,
And
really?
so they made hundreds and hundreds of millions, not
Wow.
on donors, but on the oil rigs that are out there, which has given to where he's been able to live, obviously, a very comfortable
Yeah.
and good lifestyle. Like I said, whether that is 100% true or not, that's what I've been told from people who really know him very, very well, who will kind of explain that type of thing away. And so I think there's a balance, though. I don't think a preacher needs to be poor.
Right.
I don't think that's a necessary requirement to be in ministry.
Right.
Now,
Because
like I
then it's
said, if a
almost the
donor,
opposite problem. It's like, well, this guy can
why would I
barely
want to be
afford.
like that?
Right. Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
I think there's got to be a balance there, and it's up to donors.
Yeah,
Donors see, oh, he got a jet, and I've been given to his ministry for 10 years. Well, if I don't like that, then I stop giving.
sure.
So I think
Yeah,
I think
people need to
it's
make their own
balance.
decisions. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
And okay, do you think that it's a proper role of a pastor to kind of advise on who to vote for, taxes, abortion? When do you think it's appropriate for a pastor to insert himself into politics?
Yeah, I think it's inevitable. The Bible's full of it. If you remove the politics out of the Bible, you don't have a Bible. It's think about it. They're all dealing with kings. They're all dealing with every king had a prophet. So if
Yeah,
you think about that, every king had a prophet. So a preacher was assigned to advise political issues. The
right.
Bible deals with all of our political issues, life, gender, marriage. That's the first page of the Bible. God deals with borders. He's the one that created the borders for the nations. That's in the book of Acts. So taxes, God deals with that. So all of these issues are biblical in nature, that you can speak to them. Obviously, as a pastor, when you're preaching, you don't want to just preach political sermons. You got to deal with this is what scripture is saying so people can grow spiritually.
Right.
But to avoid it altogether, and to say, well, we don't want to be political. Well, you'd have to get rid of Abraham. He dealt with politicians. Joseph was he was a prime minister. Joseph was the prime minister of Egypt. David was a king. Solomon was a king. Daniel was an advisor to a wicked king. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they were advisors to wicked kings.
Yeah.
So if you go through it, Jesus dealt with politics and Jesus dealt with kings. Paul, his whole aim was to preach to politicians at the end of the book of Acts. Peter dealt with the same. And so just to say, well, we have to separate the two, that you can't.
Right.
And those are the two things they tell you not to talk about. And I
What do you
wonder why.
Yeah, no, 100%. What do you think about the idea of, it bothers me most when Republicans say this, but what do you think about the idea that Republicans or government shouldn't legislate morality?
It already does.
Right. Yeah.
That's what determines
It's
crime.
like you just
Or,
conceded the entire fight.
yeah,
What a
no,
stupid talking point.
morality. That I mean, it's against the law to murder. Why? Because that's immoral. It's against the law to, run a Ponzi scheme or what? Why? Because that's immoral. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
all legislation is regulating morality.
Yeah.
You can do this and you can't do this. And if you do this and you're not supposed to, you're going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is one of the dumbest things that anyone could say. Well, at that point, you would have to go full libertarian. No law.
Right.
You couldn't have law because that's all a law is to regulate behavior.
Yeah. No, you're
I
exactly
mean,
right.
so Yeah, I'm with you on that. Yeah, if some people thought twice, they might be the smartest person in their
Well,
family, you
it's
know?
just such a losing mentality, and you're literally conceding the entire fight when you say something like that.
Yeah,
It should, well, why even be here? Go cry in a corner or something. I don't know,
yeah.
but okay. So, as a pastor, from your perspective, are we biblically commanded to support Israel?
I believe so. Now, let me differentiate some of this, okay? Because the modern state of Israel, I do believe, is a fulfillment in end times biblical prophecy. The way I read, now listen, when it comes to the end times, you never want to be dogmatic, definitive, because that's how you
Right.
get egg on your face, right?
Yeah.
So, my reading is, though, that at the end, the fig tree would blossom again, that God would bring the Jews from all the nations of the world back to the land promised to Abraham. When I read the book of Revelation, many of those things happen specifically in the land of Israel. We're given like the geographical, it's not like a spiritual thing, it's a real place. So, my understanding of scripture, my understanding of the end times is that at the end, there has to be, in order for these things to happen, there has to be a Jewish state in the land promised to Abraham. That's my understanding. So I'm coming from
Okay.
it from an already biased perspective.
Yeah.
And so I do believe that God made a covenant with Abraham, and that covenant is still continued today through his descendants, which are obviously the Jewish people. Someone like myself, a Gentile, I've been grafted in. So I didn't replace, God didn't start a new line. God grafted me into what already existed and will exist for all of eternity.
Right.
Romans chapter 11, Paul says that the covenant that God made with the Jewish people is not dependent upon the Jewish people, that it was dependent upon the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So it's an eternal covenant. God promised them that piece of real estate in the book of Genesis, and he reiterates it over 22 times. 22 times in Genesis, God defines the borders, and it's not a spiritual land, it's a physical piece of land. We're given the borders. So, with that being said,
Hold on, just to clarify, does the Bible specifically outline the borders?
oh yeah, Genesis
Okay.
chapters 16, 22, and it's what you if you Google Greater Israel. So
Yeah.
what Israel occupies today is about the size of New Jersey. What God promised Abraham is what you could Google Greater Israel. It's Iraq, Saudi Arabia. It's a very large piece of land. So God gives the borders. He
Yeah.
now you say, well, why can God do that? Because he owns it. All of
Right.
creation is his.
Right.
So if he outlines, this little area here belongs to this people group, well, I'm in no place to say it's not theirs.
Right.
I'm in no position. God has said, and it's eternal. So that's something you have to, it's an eternal. Now, why did they get kicked out of the land? Because they disobeyed. They
Right.
walked in disobedience. But the promise is they're coming back because it's an
Hmm.
eternal promise. So,
Do you think
with that
Israel
being said,
is well, I don't want to cut you off. Did you have
no, go
another
ahead.
thought?
Go.
Okay. Do you feel like Israel is justified in taking Gaza? And if they are, by what means are they
Yeah.
justified?
Yeah, that's where you bring it to a modern day issue. And so a lot of people will say, well, the state of Israel is ungodly. Well, if you go read your Old Testament, the state of Israel has always been ungodly. All the kings, except for a handful, were evil, were wicked. They rebelled against God. But guess what? God never broke his covenant with them throughout the entire. You go read the Old Testament, Israel was a lot worse then than what they are now. I mean,
Hmm.
today they look like saints compared to the Jews of the Old Testament. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. Yeah.
And so now, does that mean that I agree with every decision the state of Israel makes? No, I don't even agree with every decision my own country makes, let alone some other country. I don't know. That doesn't mean I don't support the Jewish people or the state of Israel, just like my country. When Joe Biden was in office, I was still a supporter of the United States of America, even
Yeah.
though I couldn't stand the direction and decisions that we were making. So, does Israel have a right to Gaza? Well, biblically, yes. Now, how you handle that geopolitically, that's an entirely different story. That's an entirely, because listen, I don't think the Palestinians are saying, I agree with the book of Genesis. This land belongs to the Jews. I don't, the Jews have always fought. The modern day Palestine comes from the Emperor Hadrian in the year 130. He expelled all the Jews out of Judea, and to stab the knife in their back, he renamed Judea to Palestina, which is Latin for Philistine. It
Hmm.
was the rivals of the Jewish people were the
Right.
Philistines. So he changed the name from Judea to Palestina, which is Philistine in Latin, and we get it modern day Palestine. So whenever I say the Jews have a biblical right to it, I mean, that's obvious. That's like not, a, I don't think, a disputable matter. But I don't think the Palestinians agree with Genesis chapter 12, 16, 22. So that's where you come into, yeah. And listen, the Jews always had to fight for the land, and they were commanded by God to do so. God told them, go conquer these cities and
Yeah.
wipe out these people. That's not Jackson. That was God
Yeah.
a long, long time ago. So, do they have a right to it? Yes. What are the means? I mean, I don't know. I don't know. It doesn't look pretty right now.
Right. Hmm. It seems to me just on a like there's different aspects of this. There's political and spiritual and warfare and all that stuff. But Israel at the beginning, when they were first attacked, when they had that major terrorist attack, they had the political will of basically the entire country. I mean, yes, there were some people who still didn't support Israel, but they had so much momentum. And I think the unfortunate part of this, if they just smacked them hard and gotten it over with in like a week,
Over. Yeah.
it should have just been done. But it's the
Yeah.
fact that it's dragging out, and it's just like it's like everyone's favorite topic of conversation right now. Which kind of brings me to my next point. So there's people like Fuentes, Candace Owens, and Tucker Carlson. They don't obviously agree on everything, but they're claiming the authority of Christianity and God in the opposite direction of what you're saying. So, what do you say to people that are listening to them and even kind of agreeing with their talking points on this issue?
Well, I think that Nick Fuentes, Candace Owens, and Tucker Carlson should all stick to politics and not scholarship of the Bible.
Sure.
So they're not authorities to speak on what the Bible says. Now, if they want to talk about political issues, their opinion matters. Their
Hmm.
opinion, great, this is what they do. They want to talk about the Bible, their opinion doesn't matter.
Hmm.
That's the bottom line. So, in regards to listening to those three from a biblical standpoint, well, you'd be wasting your time. That's
Well, let
not
me
their area.
let me push back on that just a little bit. You're not a doctor, so who are you to say that this person doesn't need a vaccine? My
From a
point.
religious standpoint, no, you're totally right. I'm not a doctor, but we had plenty of doctors that said they don't need it, therefore use the religious exemption route. So
Sure.
I wasn't basing that on my authority. I dare not speak. Here's all I knew. I wasn't taking that sucker, and neither was my family. And if
Yeah.
anybody else wanted me to help them, I was willing to help them because we had many other doctors that were saying
Yeah.
this may not turn out so well, especially for younger people taking
Right.
it. Why is a young and we kind of see the results of that.
Right.
But yeah, to Tucker, Candace, Nick, they're political commentators who are trying to use the Bible to push their political agenda, and they're just incorrect. I don't think they're malicious. I don't think they're evil. Any of that stuff. I think they have a political agenda that
Hmm.
they want to push, and therefore you cherry pick out of scripture so that Christians, who are your base audience, will go with your political agenda. That's
Right.
my take. Like I said, never want to be dogmatic or definitive on the end time stuff because we have 2,000 years of church history to prove anyone who says they know what they're talking about the end has no idea what they're talking about when it comes to the end. And so
Yeah.
that's my view, that's my vantage point. But I think you can make a very easy case that God is still in covenant with the Jewish people and that God promised to restore them from all the nations of the earth back to the land of Israel. And it's necessary for the end to take place whenever that may be.
Right. Okay, so we have a few minutes left here. I wanted to ask you, what is the goal and what is the purpose of the White House Faith Council, and what do you guys hope to accomplish in this next year?
Yeah, so the first and foremost goal is to protect religious liberty because unfortunately, under Barack Obama and Joe Biden, the federal government was used as a weapon to target people of faith, especially Christians who were conservative, whether that was through the IRS primarily, DOJ, FBI, ATF. And so it is to make sure that just as nobody gets in between a patient and their doctor, nobody gets in between a person and God, especially the US government.
Right.
And the government was getting involved, but targeting specifically conservative Christians. And the White House has listed on their website hundreds of cases of this example of people being targeted for their faith.
Can you briefly go
And
over what are some of the more prominent examples?
well, the most prominent example by far was Grand Canyon University.
Okay.
Grand Canyon University is a Christian university, and they received under Biden the largest fine in U.S. history. So I want you to think about that for a second. From the IRS, the largest fine in U.S. history went to Grand Canyon University
Hmm.
because it's a conservative Christian university that was engaging in politics, all right, engaging in the political realm. Well, I'm pretty sure Harvard involves itself in politics quite a bit.
Yeah,
They just happen
absolutely.
to involve themselves on the left,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And
And most
so
other public
they
universities too. Yeah.
all do. I mean, come on. They all, I mean, like, come on.
Yeah, that's
So why does this
ridiculous.
university receive the largest fine in US history? Well, Donald Trump undid that like on day one. So
Wow.
they won't pay a penny of that.
That's
Liberty
great.
University, another Christian university,
Yeah.
received the same exact type of fine, not as large. Theirs was undone as well. Then we have individuals. We have pastors that had their lives literally flipped upside down
Yeah.
from the IRS. The rate that pastors being audited compared to say a normal everyday person skyrocketed. So why are pastors
That's
who lean
insane, bro.
conservative? Oh yeah, it's been awful. And so
Wow.
we've gone and exposed that. And like I said, all of it's publicly listed because people are like, I just don't think that actually happened. Well, it's there on the White House. Go to the White House's website, go to the area of the faith office, you'll be able to find it. And so that's the primary objective, is to make sure that never happens again.
Yeah.
That is why now in every agency, there is a faith director. So in every FBI, DOJ, IRA, you name it, every agency has a director of faith to make sure that that agency is not targeting people of faith. That's
Yeah.
so this is a game changer. But then also, President Trump wants pastors at the White House to pray, to worship, saturate the place in the presence of God. He is very adamant. He wants pastors there,
Yeah.
and that's not to gain anything politically because he already got our votes. We already mobilized our people. He doesn't need us any longer, but he wants us to be there, which speaks volumes to him, I think.
Absolutely. Um, that's amazing. So, do you think that there's kind of offensive measures that you would support that would encourage Christianity? For example, like ten
Yeah,
commandments being posted in schools or something like that.
yeah, those are no-brainers to me.
Yeah.
If listen, if you don't want people committing those crimes, make sure they know not to do them.
Right.
you know, make sure they know from the time they're little
Yeah.
all the way up. We
Because
don't do this.
Right, because right now it's like instead of the Ten Commandments, it's like have gay sex and you're not actually a
Yeah,
boy, and race is the most important thing in the world.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you're
So
going to
there,
have an entire generation that thinks that because
right,
listen, kids are easily shaped, molded, they're impressionable. And if you start that when they're young, what do you expect?
right.
What do you expect?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
offensively, yes, we have to get on the offense. We have lost so much ground, right?
Yeah.
We've lost so much ground. Part of that is electing the right people because you can't do these things if you don't have the right people in office. And so you
Right.
still have to win elections to shape policy to impact people. But yeah, offensively, I'm all for it.
It
I
does
like offense
seem
better than defense.
it does seem like, I guess if you remember kind of the early mid 2000s, it was like Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris and these guys where it seemed like atheism was just inevitable and like we're just
Yeah.
going to be a secular country. Right now though, it feels like there's a lot of hope for
Oh
America,
yeah.
for Jesus in this country. And it felt like that even before Charlie Kirk, but since Charlie Kirk, it felt like that was really kind of a catalyst for something big. I don't know. Do you feel that?
Oh, well, I don't really feel it. I know it. We have
Yeah,
the stats to back it up. And here's the amazing thing. They said the generation that's behind me, I'm a millennial, so what is it, Gen Z or whatever it is after me, was going to be a lost generation. That was all the experts. And they were
right.
totally wrong.
Yeah.
It is now the number one generation in regards to church attendance in this country.
Really? I didn't know that.
The younger generation attends church more often every month than the boomer generation does.
That's
Incredible.
incredible.
It's
Wow.
incredible. So we have the stats to back it up. Spotify Christian app downloads are up 100%. The YouVersion Bible app, it's up 40%.
Yeah,
In-person Bible sales is up 80%. I mean, you can go through all the numbers, all the numbers. It shows people are turning back to God. And that is always a good thing for a country. Always a good thing.
absolutely. Well, the atheist argument falls apart pretty quick. Why is murdering someone wrong? An atheist can't really answer that. Ultimately, they cannot say,
Well, I want you to think about this for a second. We get in this thing, well, we need to argue with atheists. Actually, I don't think you do. The Bible says only a fool believes there's no God. Do you know the Bible never argues for the existence of God? You want to know why the Bible never tries to prove God's existence? Because it's common sense. The
self-evident. Yeah.
Bible tries to define who God is
Mm,
and what God is like. It never argues for his existence. We don't need
wow.
to argue with them. Listen, if you don't believe in God, you have either a heart problem or a major deficiency
Yeah.
intellectually. And so usually it's a heart problem.
Yeah.
Usually it's an attitude.
Right.
I don't want there to be a God.
Yeah.
That's typically it.
Yeah. Well, we have a few seconds left. I want to give you a chance to shout out your books, website, social media. How can people support you if they feel inclined?
Yeah, all the social media, jacksonlawmeyer.com. Both of my books are there. It's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and everything like that. I really appreciate you having me on, man. I enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. We'll have to do it again one of these days.